Alright guys, so in this video, I'm going to be discussing the weird phenomenon that was 9/11 snow. Now, you may know about 9/11 snow, you might not. It's kind of maybe a little bit of an obscure thing when it comes to September 11th, but the phrase 9/11 snow refers to the amount of papers and I guess you could say light plastic that was blown into the air after both the North and the South Tower were hit. Now, it was kind of a window because the North Tower gets hit, there's a bunch of stuff in the air, the South Tower gets hit, there's even more stuff, and there is a very interesting video that just shows the sky. And the timing of this, I believe, is right before the South Tower collapses, and you can see there are a lot of papers in the air. I mean, these are the Twin Towers. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of papers in both of the buildings, and you're talking about the plane impacting multiple floors, 6, 7, 8 floors heavily. That's going to be a lot of paper, a lot of things that get flown into the air. And it's not just the paper, it's also bigger pieces of plastic, parts of chairs, everything that you could think of when it comes to an office, and even like the siding of the building, things like that, all mangled up. And it is also relatively easy to see all of the white paper, all of the plastic that got blown out from the plane impacts with the backdrop of the extremely clear blue sky, which it was on the morning of September 11th. And when it comes to like the plane impacts and how do they create all that paper and stuff, I just think it's from, you're opening up the side of an office building. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of paper that gets blown out, and a lot of that paper is probably not even together. Even if it is, it's just like loose leaf stuff. That's what I would imagine, along with other small plastics from desks. This video is pretty remarkable in capturing the phenomenon of it. So yeah, that is a crazy video. I mean, you can see all the smoke. It was a bright sunny day, zero clouds, and you can see just the beautiful blue sky getting covered. Now, obviously, it would be impossible for that timing to be, in terms of that video, after either of the towers were collapsed, because there would be so much more smoke. It would be totally different, but I believe that is right before the South Tower collapsed. And you can kind of see the phenomenon of 9/11 snow, where you get a lot of white things in the air, whether it's paper, whether it's plastic. Just, looking at that video, there were some bigger objects that were kind of just thrown all over the place. But the phenomenon is just the amount of paper and the amount of plastic that got blown into the air. And you can see in different videos where before the South Tower collapsed, if you look at the towers from a faraway vantage point, and there's even some videos of like the plaza and things like that where there is debris that's settled. There was actually debris also in the fountain in the plaza as well. There's a few photos on that, but you can just see all of the paper that is floating in and around that complex. And after the South Tower collapsed, that was it in terms of the 9/11 snow, or whatever you want to call it, because the smoke was just terrible. And then you get the 29-minute window in between the South Tower and the North Tower collapsing. CBS, a reporter got crazy video, which is just, it's such an interesting timing to even, go right up against the North Tower, look at the Marriott. I mean, it's just got to be like an out-of-body experience to do something like that. Like, imagine the South Tower. There's a crazy photo. It's not even a photo. It's just screenshots. There really were very few photos in between, but still, where you can see the base of the mangled South Tower, the side of it, after it's collapsed. And in the same image, there's the Marriott split in half, and there's the North Tower still up. It's just a crazy photo. But when it comes to 9/11 snow, obviously after the South Tower collapsed, it was just all smoke, all crap. And even when they went to film it before the North Tower collapsed in and around the complex, you really couldn't tell any particles or anything like that. There was no like white paper in the air anymore. I think the smoke had kind of pushed it all out at that point. So really the only time there was a bunch of paper and a bunch of plastic in the air, mainly at least, was in between both of the towers getting hit and the South Tower falling, because when the South Tower fell, the amount of smoke that was created, I would assume, pushed a lot of the plastic and the paper out. And even on the videos that they have before the north collapses, when they're out there on the plaza or in and around the plaza, I'm not even sure if anyone actually was at the plot. There are a few photos I know of someone looking at the tridents, and it looks like there's, I would say, 2 or 3 feet of debris up against the tridents of the North Tower after the South Tower collapsed, which makes sense. I mean, where else is it going to go? Now, the floors did pancake on top of each other, and there's a famous piece that they recovered, and they say it's about 5 or 6 floors. It's crazy. So a lot of it on both the collapses compacted down, but there's still going to be a ton of debris in the surrounding area. And I'm kind of getting off track on this video, but that is just the weird kind of timing of 9/11 snow. And obviously at the, in terms of it having any relevancy, once the towers went down, nobody really remembers that, but that was kind of something that happened where after the North Tower gets hit, there's a bunch of stuff that gets thrown up into the air. And then after the South Tower gets hit, there's even more stuff that gets thrown into the air. And I think that video does a good job of capturing what was in the air before the South Tower collapsed. Yes, it's kind of just a random thing, but it is something that interests me because it's a window-based thing. It only existed for a short amount of time. It's just like the North Tower being so low with the South Tower already having collapsed and people actually exploring that area. I mean, you've got to think, after the South Tower collapses, if you go up to the North Tower, that's risky, man. I mean, they both got hit by planes. You'd have to think the North Tower would at least be unstable, but they actually did kind of explore it. There's a photograph of the North Tower lobby. I'm sure pretty much everyone has seen it. Imagine we get video inside the North Tower lobby. I don't even know. That would be very risky to go in there. But technically, you could go in there and get out within, a certain amount of time and still survive, considering it stayed standing for 29 minutes. But you also have to consider the smoke cloud, because everyone was running away from it. And by the time the smoke cloud starts to clear, it probably takes 15 to 20 minutes even to do that. And then the North Tower is about to fall. And there are a few images of it where it looks like it's starting to clear right before the North Tower falls. But obviously then everything becomes complete rubble, and you get even more smoke and just more concrete and more material everywhere. But yeah, I would say there were 2 very interesting windows that didn't exist for very long, where you could see all of the paper and plastic in the air, and then once one of the towers fell, it just completely got overrun with smoke. And then there was that window in between the South Tower collapsing and the North Tower collapsing. But there are other photos where you can see some of the other buildings, like buildings 4 or 5, the roofs of them being just littered with paper, presumably from the Twin Towers, from the impact before the South Tower falls, because you're really not going to find any photos of those buildings, the roofs of them, after the South Tower fell because of the amount of smoke. But that is just kind of a weird thing I wanted to talk about, 9/11 snow. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.